All right, folks, here we go. Yay. All right. Shalom and welcome. Today we're going to go over, that's right, more of the book of Enoch. We are getting up there, I think. There's 100 to 108 chapters in most of these. And we are really getting up there. We are starting out here with chapter 80. Go back, start to chapter 80. And again, I'm going to use these so I can see and not be fighting with it. And here we go. Chapter 80, the book of Enoch. In those days, Angel Uriel answered and said to me, Behold, I have shown you everything, Enoch, and I have revealed everything to you that you should see this sun and this moon, and the leaders of the stars and of heaven and all those who turn to them, their tasks and their times and their departures. And in the days of the sinners the years shall be shortened, and their seed shall be tardy on their lands and fields, and all things on the earth shall alter, and shall not appear in their time. And the rain shall be kept back, and heaven shall withhold it. And in those times the fruits of the earth shall be backward, and shall not grow in their time, and the fruits of the trees shall be withheld in their time. And the moon shall alter her customs, and not appear at her time. And in those days the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light. And many rulers of the stars shall transgress their customary order, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on the earth shall err concerning them, and they shall be altered from all their ways. They shall err and take them to be gods. There we go. And evil shall be multiplied on them, and punishment shall come on them, so as to destroy all. And he said to me, Enoch, look at these heavenly tablets, and read what is written on them, and mark every individual fact. And I looked at the heavenly tablets, and read everything which was written on it, and understood everything, and read the book of all the deeds of mankind, and all the children of flesh, that they shall be on the earth till the end of generations. And I blessed Yahweh, King of glory forever, in that he has made all the works of the world. I exalted Yahweh because of his patience, and blessed him because of the children of men, the sons of Abraham. And then I said, Blessed is the man who dies in righteousness and goodness, concerning whom there is no book of unrighteousness written, and against whom no day of judgment shall be found. And the 7 holy ones brought me and placed me on the earth before the door of my house, and said to me, Declare everything to your son Methuselah, and show to all your children that no flesh is righteous in the sight of Yahweh, for he is their creator. For 1 year we will leave you with your son until you give your last commands, that you may teach your children and record it for them, and testify to all your children. And in the 2nd year they shall take you from their midst. Let your heart be strong, for the good shall proclaim righteousness to the good, and righteous shall rejoice with the righteous, and shall wish one another well. But the sinners shall die with the sinners, and the apostate shall go down with the apostate. And those who practice righteousness shall die on account of the deeds of men, and be taken away on account of the deeds of the godless. And in those days they finished speaking to me, and I came to my people, blessing Yahweh of the world. And now, my son Methuselah, all these things I am recounting to you and writing down for you, and I have revealed to you everything, and given you books concerning all these. So my son Methuselah, preserve the books from your father's hand, and see that you deliver them to the generations of the world. I have given wisdom to you and to your children, and those children to come, that they might give it to their children for generations. This wisdom, namely, passes their understanding. So again, we're told that it passes their understanding, but this is the 7th from Adam. This is ancient writings, ancient teachings, ancient things that we should know, that we should have learned, but we haven't because why? Somebody kept it from us, right? And those who understand it shall not sleep, but shall listen that they may learn this wisdom, and it shall pass those that eat thereof better than good food. You ever study the word and you don't want to sleep, you don't want to eat, you just want to study, you want to figure out what the thing is, right? You're like, okay, let's get into this calendar, let's get into this, and let's get into the dates, let's get into the feast days, let's get into Passover, let's get into Sukkot, let's get in when Yeshua was really born, September, right? Let's get into what's real and wash all those sins, all those ideologies of men, all those falsities of men away. It's like you're just you can't get enough, right? It's like I want more, more, more. Blessed are all the righteous. Blessed are those who walk in the way of righteousness and sin not as the sinners. In the numbering of all their days in which the sun traverses heaven, entering into and departing from the doors for 30 days with the heads of thousands, and the order of the stars together with the four with are within the calendar which divide the four portions of the year, which lead them and enter with them 4 days. Owing them men shall be a fault, and not count them in the whole number of days of the year. Men shall be at fault and not recognize them accurately, for they belong to the calculations of the year and are truly recorded therein forever. One in the first door and one in the third, one in the fourth and one in the sixth. And the year is completed in 364 days. Not 365, 364. And the account of it is accurate, and the recorded counting thereof is exact. For the luminaries and the months and the festivals and years and days, as Uriel shown and revealed to me, to them who Yahweh of the whole creation of the world has subjected the host of heaven. There should be no debate on calendars right here, folks. We should all have it down. And he has power over night and day in heaven to cause the light to shine on men, via the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the powers of the heaven which revolve in their circulation chariots. And these are the order of the stars, which set in their places and in their seasons and festivals and months. And these are the names of those who lead them, who watch that they enter at their times, in their orders, in their seasons, in their months, in their periods of dominion, and on their positions. There are 4 leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year, enter first, and after them the 12 leaders of the orders who divide the months. And for the 360 days are heads over thousands who divide the days. And for the 4 days in the calendar, there are the leaders which divide the 4 parts of the year. And these heads over thousands are interspected between leader and leader, each behind a station, but their leaders make the division. And these are the names of the leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year which are ordained: Machleel, Himmelech, Malachel, and Noriel. And the names of those who lead them are Adinael, Ishajel, and Amlamel. These 3 follow the leaders of the orders, and there is one that follows these leaders of the orders, which follow those leaders of stations that divide the 4 parts of the year. In the beginning of the year, Machleel rises first and rules, who is named Tamanah, the sun. And all the days of his dominion while he bears rule are 91 days. And these are the signs of the days which are to be seen on earth in the days of his dominion: sweat, heat, and calms. And all the trees bear fruit, and leaves are produced on all the trees, and the harvest of wheat, and the rose flowers, and all the flowers which come out in the field. But the trees of the winter season become withered. And these are the names of the leaders which are under them: Bachriel, Zababel, and another who is added, a head of 1,000, called Helu-Jessup. And the days of the dominion of this leader are at an end. And the next leader after is Hamelech, whom one names the shining sun, and all the days of his light are 91 days. And these are the signs of his days on the earth: glowing heat and dryness, and the trees ripen their fruits and produce all their fruits ripe and ready. And the sheep pair and become pregnant, and all the fruits of the earth are gathered in, and everything that is in the fields and the winepress, these things take place in the days of his dominion. These are the names of the orders and the leaders of those thousands: Gediel, Kalel, Hillel, and the name of a head of 1,000 which is added to them, Aspiel, and the days of his dominion are at an end. So we have very clearly what's going on here, right? And now, my son Methuselah, I will show you all my visions which I have seen, recounting them before you. I saw 2 visions before I got married, took a wife, and the one was quite unlike the other. The first, when I was learning to write, and the second, before I married, took your mother, when I saw a terrible vision. And regarding them, I prayed to Yahweh. I lay down in the house of my grandfather Meliel, when I saw in a vision how heaven collapsed and was carried off, removed and tore down, and fell to the earth. And when it fell to the earth, I saw how the earth was swallowed up in a great abyss, and the mountains were suspended on mountains, and hills sank down on hills, and high trees were ripped through their stems and hurled down and sunk in the abyss. And then a word fell into my mouth, and I lifted up my voice to cry aloud and said, the earth is destroyed. And my grandfather Meliel woke me up as I lay near him, and said to me, why do you cry so, my son? And why do you make such moaning, lamentation? And I recounted to him the whole vision which I had seen. And he said to me, you have seen a terrible thing, my son. Your dream vision is of a grave time and concerns the secrets of all the sin of the earth. It must sink into the abyss and be totally destroyed. And now, my son, arise and pray to Yahweh of glory, since you are a believer, that a remnant may remain on the earth, and that he may not destroy the whole earth. My son, from heaven, all this will come on the earth, and all the earth will be great destruction. After that I rose and prayed and implored and besought Yahweh, and wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world. And I will show everything to you, my son Methuselah. And when I had gone out below and seen the heaven, and the sun rising in the east, and the moon setting in the west, and a few stars, and the whole earth and everything as it had been known in the beginning, then I blessed Yahweh of judgment and exalted him, because he had made the sun go out from the windows of the east. And he ascended and rose on the face of heaven, and set out and kept traversing the path shown to it. And I lifted up my hands in righteousness, and blessed the Holy One, the Great One, and spoke with the breath of my mouth, and with the tongue of my flesh, with Elohim as made for the children of flesh of men. And they should speak therewith, and he gave them breath and a tongue and a mouth, that they should speak therewith. Blessed are you, O Yahweh, King of great and mighty in your greatness, Yahweh of the whole creation of heaven, King of kings, Elohim of the whole world. And your power and kingship and greatness abide forever and ever. And throughout all generations your dominion and all your heavens and your throne forever. And the whole earth are your footstool forever and ever. For you have made and you rule all things. Nothing is too hard for you. Wisdom never departs from your place of your throne, nor turns away from your presence. You know and see and hear everything, and there's nothing hidden from you, for you see everything. And now the angels of your heavens are guilty of trespass, and of the flesh of men abide your wrath until the great day of judgment. And now, O Elohim, Yahweh and great King, I implore and beseech you to fulfill my prayer, to leave me a posterity on earth, and not to destroy all the flesh of man, and make the earth without inhabitant, so that there should be an eternal destruction. And now, my Yahweh, from the earth the flesh which is aroused your wrath, but the flesh of righteousness and uprightness established as an eternal plant, being seed forever, and hide not your face from the prayer of your servant, O Yahweh. After this I saw another dream, and I will show the whole dream to you, my son. So Enoch's telling Methuselah, and he's telling him of all these things that he's seen. Could you imagine if we walk right with Yahweh? If we walk right and uprightly like we're supposed to, imagine the things that we would still see. Imagine the things that we would be able to comprehend. Amazing. And Enoch lifted up his voice and spoke to his son Methuselah. I will speak to you, my son. Hear my words. Incline your ear to the dream, vision of your father. Before I married, took your mother, Edna, I saw a vision in my bed, and behold, a bull came out from the earth. And that bull was white. And after it came out, a heifer, and along with this latter came out two bulls, one of them black and the other red. And that black bull gored the red one and pursued him over to the earth. And then I could no longer see that red bull. But the black bull grew, and that heifer went with him. And I saw that many oxen proceeded out from him which resembled and followed him. And that cow that came one went from the presence of the first bull in order to see the red one, but found him not, and mourned with a great lamentation and sought him. And I looked until the first bull came to her, and calmed her. From the time onward she cried no more. And after that she bore another white bull, and after him she had bore many bulls and black cows. And I saw in my sleep why the bull likewise grew and became a great white bull, and from him proceeded many white bulls, and they resembled him, and they began to father many white bulls, which resembled them, one following another. And again I looked, and with my eyes I slept, and I saw the heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and ate and pastured among the oxen. And after that I saw large and black oxen, bulls, and behold, they all changed their stalls and pastures and their heifers and cattle, and began to live with each other. And again I saw in the vision, and looked towards heaven, and behold, I saw many stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven to the first star. They became bulls among those cattle, and pastured with them. And I looked at them and saw all that let out their private sexual members like horses, and began to mount the cows, the bulls, and the oxen. And they all became pregnant and bore elephants, camels, and donkeys. And one of these four went with that white bull and instructed him in secret. And he was terrified, and he was born a bull, and became a man, and built himself a great vessel, and dwelt on it. And the three bulls dwelt with him in the vessel, and they were covered over. And again I raised my eyes toward heaven, and saw a high roof, with 7 water torrents on it. And those torrents flowed with much water into an enclosure. And I looked again, and behold, fountains were opened on the surface of the great enclosure. And the water began to bubble and swell and rise in the surface. And I saw that enclosure, and all its surface was covered with water. And the water, the darkness, the mist increased on it. And as I looked at the height of that water, the water had risen above the height of the enclosure, and was streaming over the enclosure, and it stood on the earth. And all the cattle of the enclosure were gathered together until I saw how they sank, and were swallowed up and perished in that water. But that vessel floated on the water, while all the oxen and the elephants and camels and donkeys sank to the bottom. All the animals that I could no longer see them, and they were not able to escape, but perished and sank into the depths. And again I watched in the vision until those water torrents were removed from that high roof, and the chasms of the earth were lifted up, and other abysses were opened. Then the water began to run down into the abysses until the earth became visible. But the vessel settled on the earth, and the darkness retired, and light appeared. But that white bull which had become a man came out of that vessel, and the three bulls with him, and the one of those was white like that bull, and one of them was red as blood, and one black, and that white bull departed from them. And they began to bring out beasts of the field and birds, and those arose lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, squirrels, swine, falcons, vultures, kites, eagles, and ravens. And among them was born a white bull. And they began to bite one another. But that white bull which was born among them fathered a wild donkey, and was white bull with it, and the wild donkeys multiplied. So he's seeing a vision, obviously, of but the bull which was born from him fathered a black wild boar and a white sheep, and the former fathered many boars. But the sheep gave birth to 12 sheep. And when those 12 sheep had grown, they gave up one of them to the donkeys, and the donkeys again gave up the sheep to the wolves, and that sheep grew up among the wolves. And Yahweh brought the 11 sheep to live with it and to pasture with it among the wolves, and to multiply and become many flocks of sheep. And the wolves began to fear him, and they oppressed him until they destroyed their little ones. And they threw their young into the deep river. But those sheep began to cry aloud on account of the little ones, and to complain unto Yahweh. And a sheep which had saved from the wolves fled and escaped to the wild donkeys. And I saw the sheep, how they lamentated and cried and besought Yahweh with all their might, until that Yahweh of the sheep descended at the voice of the sheep from a high abode, and came to them and pastured them. And he called that sheep which had escaped the wolves, and spoke with it concerning the wolves, that it should admonish them not to touch the sheep. And the sheep went to the wolves according to the word of Yahweh. And another sheep and met it, and went with it, and two went and entered together into the assembly of those wolves, and spoke with them, and admonished them not to touch the sheep from then on. And I saw the wolves, and how they more harshly oppressed the sheep with all their power, and the sheep cried aloud. And Yahweh came to the sheep, and they began to beat those wolves, and the wolves began to make lamentation, but the sheep became quiet and ceased to cry out. And I saw the sheep until they departed from among the wolves. But the eyes of the wolves were blinded, and the wolves departed in pursuit of the sheep with all their power. And the Lord of the sheep went with them as their leader, and all his sheep followed him. Sound familiar? My sheep hear my voice. My sheep know my voice. And his face was dazzling and glorious and terrible to behold. But the wolves began to pursue those sheep until they reached a sea of water. And that sea was divided, and the water stood on this side and on that side before their face. And the Lord led them and placed himself between them and the wolves. And those wolves had not seen the sheep. They proceeded into the midst of that sea. And the wolves followed the sheep, and those wolves ran after them into the sea. And when the Lord of the sheep, they returned to flee before his face. But the sea gathered itself together and became it had been created. And the water swelled and rose until it covered the wolves. And I watched until all the wolves who pursued those sheep perished and were drowned. But the sheep escaped from the water and went out into a wilderness where there was no water and no grass. And they began to open their eyes and to see. And I saw the Lord of the sheep pasturing them and giving them water and grass, that sheep going and leading them. And the sheep ascended to the summit of a high rock. And the Lord of the sheep sent to them, and after them I saw the Lord of the sheep, who stood before them, and his appearance was great and terrible and majestic. And all those sheep saw him and were afraid before his face. And they all feared and trembled because of him. And they cried to that sheep which was among them, We are not able to stand before our Lord, or behold him. And that sheep which led them again ascended to the summit of that rock. But the sheep began to be blinded and to wander from this way and that way, which it showed them. But that sheep did not realize it. And the Lord of the sheep was very angry with them, that the sheep discovered it, and went down from the summit of the rock, came to the sheep, and found the greatest part of them blinded and fallen away. And when they saw it, they feared and trembled in its presence, and desired to return to their folds. And that sheep took other sheep with it, and it came into those sheep which had fallen away, and began to slay them. And the sheep feared its presence. And thus the sheep brought back those sheep that had fallen away, and they returned into their folds. And I saw in this vision until the sheep became a man, and built a house for the Lord of the sheep, and placed all the sheep in that house. And I saw until this sheep had met that sheep which led them fall asleep, died. And I saw until all the great sheep perished, and all the roes arose in their place, and they came to pasture and approached a stem of water. Then that sheep, their leader, which had become a man, withdrew from them and fell asleep, died. And all the sheep looked for it and sought it, and cried after it with a great crying. And I saw until they left off crying for that sheep, and crossed the stream of water. And there arose 2 sheep as leaders in the place of those who had led them and fallen asleep. And I saw until the sheep came to a good place, and a pleasant place, and a glorious land, and saw until those sheep were satisfied, and that house stood among them in the green, pleasant land. And sometimes their eyes were opened, and sometimes they were blinded, until another sheep arose and led them and brought them all back, and their eyes were again opened. And the dogs and the foxes and the wild boars began to devour those sheep, until the Lord of the sheep raised up another sheep and a ram from their midst, which led them. And that ram began to butt on either side of those dogs and foxes and wild boars, until he had destroyed them all. And that sheep, whose eyes were open, saw that ram which was among the sheep, until it forsook its glory, and began to butt those sheep, and trampled on them, and behaved itself unseemingly. And the Lord of the sheep sent the lamb to another lamb, and raised it to be a ram, and the leader of the sheep, instead of that ram which had forsaken his glory. And he went to it and spoke to it alone, and raised it in being a ram, and made it the prince and the leader of the sheep. But during all these things, those dogs oppressed the sheep. And the first ram pursued the second ram, and the second ram arose and fled before it. And I saw until those dogs pulled down the first ram. And that second ram arose and led the little sheep. And those sheep grew and multiplied, but all the dogs and foxes and wild boars feared and fled before it. And that ram butted and killed the wild beasts. And those wild beasts had no longer any power among the sheep, and robbed them no more of anything. And that ram fathered many sheep and fell asleep. And a little sheep became a ram in its place, and it became a prince and a leader of those sheep. And that house became great and broad, and it was built for those sheep. And a high and great tower was built on the house for the Lord of the sheep. And that house was low, but the tower was elevated very high. And the Lord of the sheep stood on that tower, and they offered a full table before him. And again I saw those sheep, that they again erred and went many ways, and forsook their house, And the Lord of the sheep called some of them again and sent them to the sheep, but the sheep began to slay them. And one of them was saved, and one was not slain. And it sped away and cried aloud over the sheep, and they sought to slay it. But the Lord of the sheep saved it from the sheep and brought it to me and caused it to live there. And many other sheep he has sent to those sheep to testify, to lament over them. And after that I saw when they forsook the house of Yahweh and his tower, they fell away entirely, and their eyes were blinded. And I saw Yahweh of the sheep, how he worked much slaughter among them in their herds, and until those sheep invited the slaughter and betrayed his place. And he gave them over into the hands of the lions and tigers and wolves and hyenas, even into the hand of the foxes, and to all the wild beasts. And those wild beasts began to tear into pieces those sheep. And I saw he forsook their house and their tower, and gave them all into the hand of the lions, to tear and devour them, into the hand of the wild beasts. And I began to cry aloud with all my power, and to appeal to Yahweh of the sheep, because of the sheep were beginning devoured by all the wild beasts. But he remained unmoved. Though he saw it, he rejoiced that they were being devoured and swallowed and robbed, and left them to be devoured in the hand of all the beasts. And he called 70 shepherds and gave them sheep to them, that they might pasture them. And he spoke to the shepherds and their companions, let each individual of you pasture the sheep. From now on, and everything that I shall command you, do it. And I will deliver them over to you duly numbered, and tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and them will be destroyed. And he gave over to them those sheep. And he called another and spoke to him, overseer, and observe and mark everything that the shepherds will do in those sheep, for they will destroy more of them than I have commanded them. And every excess and every destruction which will be done through those shepherds, record how many they destroy according to my command, and how many according to their own caprice. Record against every individual shepherd all the destruction he effects. And read out before me the number, how many they destroy, and how many they deliver over for destruction, that I may have this as a testimony against them, and know every deed of the shepherds, that I may comprehend and see what they do, whether or not they abide by my command which I have commanded them. But they shall not know it, and you shall not declare it to them, nor admonish them, but only record against each individual all the destruction which the shepherds effect, each in his time, and lay it all before me. And I saw until those shepherds pastured their season, and they began to slay and to destroy more than they were bidden. And they delivered those sheep into the hand of the lions. And the lions and the tigers ate and devoured and greater of those sheep. And the wild boars ate along with them. And they burned that tower and demolished that house. And I became very sorrowful over that tower, because of the house of the sheep was demolished. And afterwards I was unable to see those sheep entered into the house. And the shepherds and their associations delivered over into those sheep all the wild beasts to devour them. And each one of them received in his lifetime a definite number. And it was written by the other in a book how many each of them destroyed of them. And each one slew and destroyed many more than was prescribed. And I began to weep and lament on account of those sheep. And thus in the vision I saw that one who wrote, how he wrote down every one that was destroyed by those shepherds. Day by day he carried up and laid down and showed actual the whole book to Yahweh of the sheep, everything that had been done. And all and each one of them he had made away with, and all that he had given over into destruction. Wow. And the book was read before Yahweh of the sheep. And he took the book from his hand and read it and sealed it and laid it down. And I saw how the shepherds pastured for 12 hours. And before 3 of those sheep turned back and came and entered, began to build up all that had fallen down of that house. But the wild boars tried to hinder them, but they were not able. And they began again to build as before, and they raised up that tower, and it was named the High Tower. And they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread on it was polluted and not pure. And as touching all the eyes of those sheep were blinded, so that they saw not. And the eyes of their shepherds likewise were blinded. And they delivered them in large numbers to their shepherds for destruction. And they trampled the sheep with their feet and devoured them. And Yahweh of the sheep remained unmoved until all the sheep were dispersed from over the field and mingled with the beast. And the shepherds did not save them out of the hand of the beast. And this one who wrote the book carried it up and showed it and read it before Yahweh of the sheep, and implored him on their account, and besought him on their account. And he showed him all the doings of the shepherds, and gave testimony before him and against all the shepherds. And he took the actual book and laid it down beside him and departed. Wow. So this is Enoch telling his son Methuselah and talking about all the things that's going to come to pass. It sounds like the flood. It sounds like the Messiah. It sounds like all these true shepherds, or should be shepherds, all the appointed, anointed ones, and how they devour the sheep themselves. How they are going against what he told them to do. Yes, there's certain ones. So what should we do at this time? What should we do with this information? What would we do with the information that he tells us? I would submit we don't devour or tear apart anybody or anything. We don't make ridicule and mock and make fun. If you're on the Ishtar calendar or this calendar or that, the whole thing is to show and to prove and to knowledge, right? The knowledge of it. Far too much we have learned from other religions, dominions, if you will. This is right and you're stupid. This is right and you're ignorant. This is right and it doesn't work very good, right? It doesn't work very good at all. And we're not careful, we run off more people than we bring in too. So why was this taken out? I think we can clearly see. If we're shown what we're going to do, hopefully the wise and the ones who get wisdom, the ones who are crying out to Yahweh, know how to do this better. They understand, oh, I can't run people off. I shouldn't run people. This is all about the Messiah. This whole thing, if you will, is praising Yahweh and getting people to come praise Yahweh. Seems like 90% of the world has missed the whole mark. 90% are missing the whole thing. Come to my church and give me money. Come to my assembly and give me this. Come and do, well, you got to pay the light bill. You got to pay that. We all know that. But that has absolutely nothing to do with this, right? What has that got to do with the will of Yahweh and the destruction or the salvation, right? We're stopping on chapter 90. Until next time, may Yahweh bless you. May his countenance shine upon you. May he grant you shalom. Shalom, and thank you very much for listening and for watching. We're going on to chapter 90. We're going to take a break and do it for the recording as well, because I'd like to put this as recordings and not have them really, really long for people to like to watch. Yahweh bless you. Shalom, shalom.